Have you ever noticed how people look at a woman sitting alone? At a restaurant, in a cafe, walking into a movie theater by herself? They tilt their heads, whisper to each other, almost like they're saying, poor thing, she must not have any friends. But let me ask you, why do we see solitude as weakness? Why do we assume that if a woman isn't surrounded by a circle of people, something must be wrong with her? Think about this. The strongest steel is forged in fire, not in comfort. Diamonds don't grow in crowds. They're formed in pressure, in silence, in darkness. And yet, when a woman stands on her own, people rush to judge, instead of realizing the truth that woman might be the most dangerous, the most resilient, and the most powerful version of herself you'll ever encounter. Because a woman with no friends isn't desperate. She isn't broken. She isn't lacking. She is learning to move without a crutch. She is teaching herself to be her own ally, her own protector, her own army. And that makes her unstoppable. Tonight, I want to take you into the mind, the world, and the strength of what it truly means to be a woman with no friends, not as a tragedy, but as a revolution. We've been conditioned since childhood to believe that being surrounded by people equals happiness, equals success, equals worth. From the playground to the office, from high school cliques to brunch tables lined with smiling faces, there's this unspoken rule. If you don't have people around you, if you're not constantly in the loop, something must be wrong with you. But here's the truth that most people never want to admit. Loneliness and solitude are not the same thing. They may look similar on the outside, but their roots, their energy, their consequences are completely different. Loneliness is when you sit by yourself and your thoughts scream at you. It's when the silence feels suffocating. It's when you look at your phone hoping for a text, a call, some validation, and the screen stays black. Loneliness eats at you because it tells you that you're unwanted, unworthy, unloved, and if you're not careful, it can drag you into dark places where you start believing those lies. Loneliness is disempowering. It makes you shrink. It makes you question your value. It turns your mind into your enemy. Solitude, though, that's something entirely different. Solitude is chosen. Solitude is when you sit by yourself and instead of waiting for the phone to ring, you pick up a book, you start writing, you train, you build, you breathe. Solitude is when the silence feels like clarity instead of punishment. It's when you're so grounded in who you are that you don't need noise to fill the gaps. Solitude is empowering because it allows you to listen, not to the world, not to the chatter, but to yourself. It's where you discover who you are without anyone else's influence, where you hear your own voice loud and clear. And here's the irony. Many people who surround themselves with dozens of friends are actually the loneliest. They hide in crowds, terrified of sitting with themselves because they've never learned how they're desperate for the constant distraction, the endless scrolling, the meaningless conversations. Because the idea of being alone terrifies them, they confuse company with connection and attention with love. But real strength, real confidence comes when you can sit in a room by yourself and not only survive it, but enjoy it. Think of it this way. Loneliness is like standing outside a locked door, pressing your face against the glass, begging to be let in. Solitude is realizing you don't even need to knock because you already own the building. Solitude is sovereignty. It's walking into any space with or without people beside you and knowing you don't need external validation to define your worth. Most women are told from a young age that they need friends, they need approval, they need that circle. Society whispers, if you don't have a tribe, you don't belong. But belonging to yourself, that's the highest form of power. And solitude teaches you that. It teaches you to become your own friend first. It shows you that the relationship you have with yourself will dictate every other relationship you allow into your life. Let's be real, if you don't know how to enjoy your own company, if you can't sit with yourself without judgment, if you don't know how to listen to your own voice, you'll constantly seek people to fill that gap. And when you're desperate, you settle. You allow toxic people in. You allow people to take advantage of you. You cling to relationships that drain you because you're too afraid of walking away into solitude. But once you embrace solitude, you become selective. You stop chasing. You start choosing. And those choices are made from a place of power, not fear. I want you to picture solitude as training. Imagine a warrior before the battle. She doesn't train in front of a crowd. She trains in silence away from the world. Mastering her craft, she sharpens her blade, strengthens her body, conditions her mind when the time comes to face the enemy. She is prepared, not because she was surrounded by cheering fans, but because she embraced the discipline of solitude. That's you. Your solitude is your training ground. It's where you sharpen your mind, where you strengthen your spirit, where you prepare for the life you're building. So when people look at you and think, she has no friends, let them. Because while they're spending their weekends gossiping, numbing themselves with distractions, or chasing validation, you're building, you're reading, you're studying, you're creating, you're investing in yourself. And when you step back into the world, you step back with so much force, so much presence, that everyone has no choice but to notice. Solitude gives you focus. Without the noise of 100 different opinions, you can hear your own truth. You can set your own standards. You can decide what kind of life you want without feeling the pressure to follow the herd. And when you do that, you stop wasting time on things that don't serve you. You stop trying to fit into circles that were never meant for you in the first place. Yes, loneliness hurts. Yes, it can break you down. But solitude, when you choose it, when you own it, becomes your greatest weapon. The very thing people pity you for is the very thing that will make you unshakable. And here's the beauty. Once you master solitude, loneliness loses its power over you. Because loneliness feeds on fear, and solitude feeds on strength. So the next time you're sitting alone, instead of asking yourself, why don't I have friends? Ask, what can I build in this moment? What can I learn? What part of myself can I strengthen? Shift the lens, because what you call emptiness might actually be the clean slate you've been given to design a life on your own terms. And maybe, just maybe, the woman with no friends isn't the one who's missing out. Maybe she's the one who's finally free. From the time we're little girls, we're conditioned to look outside ourselves for approval. We learn that being liked is a form of currency. You get praised for being sweet, rewarded for being agreeable, celebrated for fitting in. You're told to smile, to share, to be nice, to make others comfortable. And little by little, you begin to understand that your value is tied to how other people see you. You stop asking yourself what you want, and you start asking yourself, what do they want from me? How can I make them happy so that they'll accept me? This conditioning doesn't vanish when you grow older. It only changes shape. Suddenly it's about the number of friends you have, the likes on your photos, the comments under your posts, the compliments you get on your appearance, or the attention you receive in a room. It becomes an invisible scoreboard that determines how much you believe you're worth. And without even realizing it, you give away your power. You hand it over to the crowd, to strangers, to people who might not even know who you truly are. But here's the truth. Validation is a trap. The more you chase it, the more it controls you. Because validation has no finish line. You can have 100 people clap for you today and still go to bed at night wondering why it wasn't 200. You can have 1,000 followers and still feel empty because it wasn't 10,000. That's the problem with external validation. It's like drinking salt water. The more you consume, the thirstier you become. A woman who builds her life around validation becomes a prisoner. She starts saying yes when she wants to say no. She tolerates people who drain her just to avoid conflict. She bends herself into shapes that please others while breaking her own spine in the process. And the worst part is she loses herself. Because when you're constantly chasing what others want from you, you forget who you are, what you want, and what you stand for. You become a reflection of other people's expectations instead of the architect of your own identity. But imagine this instead. Imagine you stop seeking permission. Imagine you stop caring about whether they approve, whether they applaud, whether they accept you. Imagine you stand in front of a mirror and tell yourself, I am enough, even if no one claps. I am enough, even if no one notices. I am enough, even if I walk this path alone. That is power, because the moment you stop needing validation, you become untouchable. People can criticize you, ignore you, misunderstand you, and it doesn't break you because your worth isn't up for debate. And I want you to think about this. When people walk away from you, when friends ghost you, when relationships end, when you get unfollowed, when you don't get invited, that's not always about you. Most of the time it's about them. Their insecurities, their jealousy, their inability to handle your growth. Yet if you live for validation, you'll interpret every rejection as proof that you're not good enough. You'll bend even harder to win back approval, and in doing so, you'll betray yourself. What if instead of asking, do they like me, you asked, do I like me? Because that's the real question. Do you respect the way you show up in the world? Do you honor your own boundaries? Do you keep the promises you make to yourself? Because here's the truth. No one tells you the deepest validation you'll ever feel doesn't come from likes, friends, or applause. It comes from integrity. It comes from knowing you didn't betray yourself to please someone else. You see, validation is temporary. Today they love you. Tomorrow they don't. Today you're the hero. Tomorrow you're the villain. Public opinion is fickle. It shifts with the wind. If you tie your identity to it, you'll forever be unstable, forever adjusting, forever desperate to keep up. But when you root your value inside yourself, when you validate yourself, you stop being swayed by the crowd. You walk into a room with the same confidence, whether people cheer or stay silent. That's real freedom. Think of some of the most influential women in history. They weren't validated at the time. Many of them were mocked, dismissed, even hated. But they didn't crumble because the world didn't clap. They stood tall because their validation came from within. They believed in their mission, in their voice, in their worth. Long before anyone else did. And in the end, it wasn't the validation that gave them power. It was the refusal to need it. This is what happens when you free yourself from the myth of validation. You reclaim your energy. You stop pouring it into trying to win over people who were never meant to be in your corner. You stop begging for crumbs of attention and start feasting on your own strength. You stop living for their applause and start living for your purpose. And here's the part that flips everything upside down. When you no longer need validation, the right kind of validation naturally finds you. Because people are drawn to confidence, to authenticity, to the woman who doesn't beg for approval, but walks as though she already has it. That's the paradox. The less you chase it, the more you attract it. But the difference is, now it's a bonus, not a lifeline. So yes, you may have no friends right now. Maybe people don't invite you out. Maybe they don't text. Maybe they don't check in. And maybe for a while that stings. But don't confuse their silence with your worth. Don't mistake their absence as evidence that you are lacking. Because the woman who stands on her own and validates herself has more strength in her pinky finger than 100 people who rely on others to define who they are. The myth of validation is that you need it to survive. The truth is, once you stop needing it, you begin to thrive. Because you're no longer a puppet pulled by strings of approval. You're the one holding the strings, writing your story, living by your own rules. And when you reach that place, you'll never again beg for applause. You'll clap for yourself, and that sound will be louder than anything the crowd could ever give you. There comes a moment in every woman's life when she realizes that not everyone clapping for her is a friend, and not everyone smiling at her has her best interest at heart. Some people want you close only when you're useful. Some people cheer only when you stay smaller than them. And some people leave the moment you grow beyond what they can handle. If you rely on those people to hold you up, you will fall. That's why every woman who wants to thrive without depending on others must learn to build her own armor. Armor is not about hiding. It's not about closing yourself off to the world. It's about protection. It's about resilience. It's about creating a barrier between your core self and the noise, the criticism, the rejection, the betrayal. Because let's face it, life is not going to spare you. People will lie to you. They will misunderstand you. They will judge you unfairly. And if you have no armor, every word, every action, every glance will pierce you. But once you've built that inner armor, those arrows hit but don't penetrate. They bounce off. They don't define you. They don't break you. Building inner armor starts with self-trust. Too many women outsource their decision-making, waiting for someone else to confirm they're doing the right thing. But if you don't trust yourself, your armor is full of holes. You'll constantly question, constantly hesitate, constantly bend to someone else's version of your life. Self-trust is saying, I know myself, I know my values, and I will stand by them even if no one agrees. That doesn't come overnight. It comes from proving to yourself over and over again that you can rely on you. When you say you're going to do something, you follow through. When you promise yourself discipline, you keep it. When you set a boundary, you enforce it. Every time you do that, you're adding another plate of steel to your armor. Then comes emotional discipline. People will test you. They'll poke. They'll provoke. They'll say things just to get a reaction out of you. And if you're quick to anger, quick to cry, quick to spiral, you're handing them power. Emotional discipline doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you don't hand over control of your emotions to others. It's the ability to breathe through the insult, to walk away from the drama, to choose your response instead of being dragged by impulse. A woman with emotional discipline is terrifying to people who try to control her, because nothing they do rattles her. That composure is armor. Boundaries are another layer. Too often, women are told that their worth comes from how much they give, how much they sacrifice, how much they endure. But every time you allow someone access to you who doesn't deserve it, you weaken yourself. Boundaries aren't walls, they're gates. And you decide who enters. Not everyone gets a front row seat in your life. Not everyone deserves your time, your energy, your softness. Your armor is strongest when you are unapologetic about protecting your peace. Saying no is not cruel. It's clarity. It's self-respect in action. So let's talk about the part of armor people rarely address. Carrying yourself with dignity even when no one is watching. It's easy to put on a strong face when the world is paying attention. But who are you when you're alone, when no one will know whether you cut corners, when no one is there to clap for you? That's when your armor is forged. Character is armor. Integrity is armor. Every time you choose to be true to yourself, even in silence, you harden that steel. Building inner armor also means not personalizing every loss. People leave. Opportunities vanish. Doors close. It's not always about you. Sometimes people walk away because of their own battles. Sometimes life redirects you because the path you wanted isn't the one you need. But if you interpret every setback as proof that you're not worthy, you weaken yourself. Your armor comes from understanding that rejection is often redirection. That loss can be a teacher, not a curse. And when you learn to see pain as part of your training instead of evidence of your failure, you grow tougher, sharper, harder to break. Here's another truth about armor. It isn't about being cold. It isn't about shutting down your heart. It's about discernment. It's about knowing when to soften and when to stand firm. Think of a warrior on the battlefield. She doesn't walk around in armor 24 hours a day. She wears it when she needs it. In the same way, you don't armor yourself to keep out love, kindness, or connection. You armor yourself so you can recognize what's real and what's poison. And when you know the difference, you don't waste time on poison anymore. Now here's a part that may sting. Building armor requires solitude. It requires stepping away from the noise long enough to hear your own voice. You cannot build armor if you're constantly chasing approval or hiding in crowds. You need that silence. You need those moments where it's just you and your reflection in the mirror, asking, who am I really? What will I tolerate? What will I fight for? Every honest answer adds strength to your armor. A woman with inner armor is misunderstood by many. People might call her intimidating. They might call her cold. They might say she's too much, too hard, too distant. But that's only because they can't manipulate her. They can't control her emotions. They can't walk all over her. And people who are used to easy access will always resent the gates they can't pass through. Let them. Their opinions don't dent your steel. What they don't see is that your armor is not a cage. It's freedom. It's freedom from being swayed by gossip, from being broken by betrayal, from being paralyzed by fear. It's the ability to walk alone without crumbling, to stand up after being knocked down, to keep your head high when people expect you to bow. It's not about being invincible. It's about being unshakable. So yes, you may be a woman with no friends. You may walk into rooms alone. You may not have a circle cheering you on. But what you do have, what you've built, is armor. And with that armor, you're not fragile. You're not desperate. You're not at the mercy of anyone else's loyalty or betrayal. You are your own fortress. And from that fortress, you can build anything. Isolation is a word that scares people. For many, it brings up images of being abandoned, cut off, forgotten. They see it as punishment. as proof that something is wrong with them. But what if isolation is not punishment at all? What if it is the most powerful opportunity you'll ever be given? Because in isolation, when all the noise disappears, when the distractions fade, when there is no one left to impress or perform for, that is where transformation begins. Think about history. The greatest breakthroughs, the boldest visions, the most resilient leaders, many of them were shaped in isolation. Writers retreat into silence to create words that move generations. Athletes train in empty gyms long before stadiums cheer their names. Inventors spend sleepless nights alone in workshops, building what no one else can see. Isolation has always been the soil where greatness grows. But most people never plant anything there, because they're too afraid of being alone with themselves. When you are isolated, you are given a choice. You can either treat it like a cage, or you can treat it like a training ground. A cage makes you shrink. It makes you bitter, makes you feel like the world has forgotten you. But a training ground, that's where you get sharper, stronger, more intentional. That's where you practice, where you refine, where you design. In isolation, you are free from the expectations of others. You don't have to wear a mask. You don't have to fit in. You don't have to waste your energy on maintaining appearances. You can redirect every ounce of that energy into building yourself. Most people run from isolation because they confuse it with loneliness. But loneliness is about lack. Isolation, when embraced, is about abundance. It gives you time, space, clarity. It gives you a chance to ask yourself the questions you've been avoiding. Who am I without their opinions? What do I want when no one is telling me what I should want? What kind of life do I want to build when no one else is watching? These are questions that can only be answered in solitude. And here's the secret. Isolation strips away the noise, so you can finally hear your own voice. When you're constantly surrounded by people, by chatter, by expectations, you may not even realize how much of your life is a reaction to others. You take jobs because they sound impressive. You wear clothes because they'll be praised. You make choices because they'll be approved. But in isolation, all of that falls away. You're forced to listen to yourself. And at first, that can be terrifying, because maybe you realize you don't even know your own voice anymore. But once you find it, once you recognize it, that voice becomes your compass, and no crowd can ever drown it out again. There's another gift in isolation: mastery. When no one is watching, you can fail without judgment. You can practice without pressure. You can learn without shame. Think of the musician practicing scales for hours in an empty room. The fighter shadowboxing in silence. The entrepreneur sketching ideas late into the night. That's where the foundation is built. The applause comes later, but the greatness is forged in those hidden hours of isolation. And let's talk about strength. Being alone teaches you how to rely on yourself. When you're isolated, there's no one to lean on, no one to rescue you, no one to hold your hand. At first, that feels cruel, but over time, it becomes empowering. You learn that you can endure, that you can handle your own storms, that you can comfort yourself in ways you never thought possible. You stop being afraid of what if no one is there, because you realize you are there. You've always been there. And that realization gives you a backbone of steel. Isolation also filters people. When you step away, when you stop being constantly available, you quickly see who was really in your corner. The ones who cared only when you were convenient will disappear. The ones who truly respect you will stay, even if the contact is less frequent. Isolation is like a fire. It burns away what is fake and leaves behind what is real. And that clarity is a gift, because you stop wasting energy on relationships that were never genuine. Now, does this mean isolation is always easy? No. There will be nights when the silence feels heavy. There will be moments when you question whether you're on the right path. There will be days when you long for a familiar face or a comforting voice. But here's what you need to remember. Discomfort is not danger. Discomfort is growth. Muscles only get stronger when they're pushed to the limit. Diamonds only form under pressure. And your character, your resilience, your vision, they're only forged when you endure the silence of isolation. So, how do you turn isolation into power? You stop wasting it. You stop sitting in it, complaining about what you don't have, and you start using it to build what you want. You read, you study, you create, You work on your body, your mind, your craft. You set goals, not for approval, but for progress. You use every moment of solitude as an investment in the person you are becoming. Because when the world comes knocking again, and it will, you will be ready. You will step back into the light, not as the same woman who entered isolation, but as someone transformed. And here's the most important part. When you know how to turn isolation into power, you stop fearing it. You stop clinging to toxic friendships just to avoid being alone. You stop settling for crumbs just to fill the silence. You stop compromising your worth for company because you know that even if you have no one, you still have everything you need. You have you. And that is enough. So let them talk. Let them whisper about how you spend your time alone. Let them assume you're missing out because while they're busy filling the void with noise, you're busy turning your isolation into a foundation. And when you emerge, they will wonder how you became so strong, so focused, so unstoppable. The answer will be simple. You stopped fearing isolation and started using it. That is where the power lies. Not in the crowd, not in the applause, not in the constant company. The power lies in the silence. In the moments when it's just you and your will, your vision, your discipline, that's where you build the kind of strength no one can take away from you. And that is why isolation is not your enemy. It is your greatest advantage. Not all company is good company. That's a hard truth. Many people don't want to face too often. Women are told that their value comes from how many friends they have, how many invitations they receive, how many people they can call on a Friday night. But numbers don't equal nourishment. A crowd doesn't equal connection. You can sit at a table full of people and feel completely unseen. You can have 10 names in your phone and not a single one you could call in a moment of real crisis. Quantity is an illusion. Quality is where the power is. When you stop fearing being friendless, you begin to see clearly how much energy you've wasted keeping relationships alive that should have died a long time ago. You recognize the so-called friends who drain you, who only come around when they need something, who smile to your face but talk behind your back, who secretly resent your growth. Those people take from you piece by piece until you no longer recognize yourself. And yet because of fear of judgment, fear of being alone, you keep them around. But here's the reality. Every moment you spend entertaining the wrong people is a moment stolen from the right ones. Choosing quality over quantity means raising the bar for who gets access to you. It means asking yourself, does this person make me stronger or weaker? Do I feel expanded around them or diminished? Do they celebrate me when I rise or do they only feel comfortable when I'm struggling? Those answers tell you everything you need to know. And when you start listening to those answers, you realize most of the people you thought you needed, you don't. Now, this doesn't mean you have to walk through life completely alone forever. This isn't about rejecting everyone. It's about alignment. It's about refusing to settle for shallow when you're capable of depth. It's about choosing people who match your energy, your values, your vision, because here's the truth. One friend who truly sees you, supports you, challenges you, and grows with you is worth more than 100 friends who only come around for convenience. And here's something else. When you value quality over quantity, you stop competing, you stop performing, you stop wearing masks just to keep people around. Because quality connections don't require performance. They require presence. The right people don't need you to shrink, to dim your light, to hide your ambition. They want to see you in your fullness, and they're not threatened by it. That's how you know the difference between someone who belongs in your life and someone who doesn't. But before you can attract quality people, you have to become quality yourself. You can't demand loyalty, honesty, and strength from others if you haven't cultivated it in your own character. That's the real work, becoming the kind of person you would want to be friends with. Integrity attracts integrity. Discipline attracts discipline. Courage attracts courage. If you want quality, you have to embody it first. Otherwise, you'll keep settling for the same low standards you've been tolerating. And I want you to think about how much more powerful your life becomes when you cut away the excess. Imagine not feeling obligated to respond to 10 different group chats that drain you. Imagine not rearranging your schedule to please people who wouldn't even notice if you disappeared. Imagine focusing your time and energy on just 1 or 2 relationships that are meaningful, supportive, reciprocal. Your stress drops. Your clarity rises. Your sense of peace returns. That's the reward of quality. Of course, when you begin choosing quality, you will lose people. Some will resent your boundaries. Some will accuse you of changing. Some will distance themselves because they can no longer take advantage of you. That's not a loss. That's a filter. Let them go. Because what's left behind is real. And when you're left with the real, you realize how unnecessary the crowd always was. And here's another truth. Quality connections don't always mean lifelong ones. Some people come into your life for a season, and their role is still valuable. Maybe they teach you something. Maybe they give you strength during a specific chapter. Maybe they help you see yourself more clearly. The point isn't to hold on to people forever. The point is to cherish the genuine when it shows up and not cling to the counterfeit when it doesn't. You might be a woman with no friends right now, and that's okay. That's better than surrounding yourself with the wrong ones. Because when you learn to walk alone with strength, you'll eventually meet people who walk with the same strength. When you stop lowering your standards, you'll start attracting those who meet them naturally. That's when friendship becomes powerful. That's when connection becomes sacred. Choosing quality over quantity also means recognizing that not everyone is meant to have access to every part of you. Some people only get the surface, a very select few get your depth. And that's not coldness, that's wisdom. Not everyone is worthy of your story. Not everyone deserves to know your battles, your dreams, your scars. Reserve that level of intimacy for the people who have earned it, proven it, and sustained it. That's how you protect your energy and preserve your strength. The beauty of choosing quality is that it removes desperation. You stop begging people to stay. You stop chasing those who are walking away. You stop begging for seats at tables where you were never truly welcome. Instead, you build your own table. And if only 1 or 2 sit with you, so be it. Because what matters is not how many are there, but who is there. So yes, it may look like you have no friends. It may look like your circle is empty. But I promise you this, an empty circle is better than a toxic one. Silence is better than fake laughter. Solitude is better than betrayal. Because when you finally choose quality over quantity, you step into a life that feels lighter, freer, more aligned. And from that place, when true connection comes, you'll recognize it instantly. You won't be desperate for it. You won't settle for less. You'll know the difference. At the end of the day, you don't need dozens of people to validate your existence. You don't need a crowd to prove your worth. All you need are a few genuine souls who see you, who respect you, who support you without condition. And until those people arrive, you have yourself, and that will always be enough. There comes a point where you stop explaining yourself, stop apologizing for walking alone, and stop trying to convince the world that you're okay. Because you realize you don't need to. Being a woman with no friends isn't a weakness, it's a season that shapes you, sharpens you, prepares you. It's the fire that burns away the fake, the silence that reveals your strength, the solitude that builds your voice. You've learned that loneliness is not the same as solitude. You've seen through the myth of validation. You've built your inner armor, turned isolation into power, and chosen quality over quantity. And now you understand something most people never will. Your worth was never tied to how many people stand beside you. It was always inside you, waiting for you to claim it. So here's the message I want you to leave with. If you have no friends today, you are not broken. You are becoming, you are not lacking. You are clearing space. You are not forgotten. You are preparing for the life you're meant to build. Walk tall in that truth. Stop begging for seats at tables where you were never welcome. Stop chasing people who cannot walk at your pace. Stop apologizing for your strength. A woman who learns to walk alone is a woman who cannot be stopped. And when you rise, when you shine, when you finally meet those rare, genuine souls who match your energy, you won't need them to complete you. You'll already be whole. So hold your head high. Walk your path boldly. And remember this, it is far better to stand alone in your power than to shrink in a crowd that was never meant for you. That is not loneliness. That is freedom. That is strength. That is you.